this. But what I was wanting to focus on is right here. As soon as Jesus heard this word that your daughter is dead, don't bother the master anymore, he said, fear not, only believe. And most of the time when we talk about this, we emphasize believing, and I'm not trying to minimize that. We do have to believe. We've got to believe. Everything comes through faith. But I want to focus on the fact that Jesus told him, fear not, only believe. And this is something that I don't think most people really deal with properly, is they allow their emotions to just go wild. They allow unbelief to rise up. They entertain thoughts that are completely contrary to the results that they want, and they don't understand how that your very first reaction when you're in a crisis situation usually dictates what the outcome is going to be. Now, you may not agree. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to share some scriptures with you and make this point. But how you respond to things is more important. I mean, the very first response is more important usually than what you do in the long term. My wife hates me to use these examples, but I've had horses most of my life, and I learned a lot through horses. And one of the things I learned about a horse is that it's easy to keep a horse in check if you know what you're doing. But if you let a horse get out of control and you let him get a full head of steam and you let him start running, probably the best thing you can do is jump off, because you are not going to be able to rein in a horse that has his full steam. You know, they weigh at least 1,200 pounds, depending on the horse you're talking about, up to 2,000 something pounds, and you aren't going to be able to rein them in. But I actually had a situation where I had a little 7-year-old boy come out to ride my horses, and my horses were all green broke, which means they weren't like the horse you go ride when you go riding someplace. You got to know how to ride. And this 7-year-old boy wanted to ride, and so I just taught him what the word says about that you put a bit in a horse's mouth. A horse can't do anything without its head. Did you know a horse can't get down on the ground? It could fall or trip, but I mean, as far as getting down, it can't get down unless it puts its head down. So I had a horse that it'd get tired of you riding it, and it'd just put its head down and act like it was going to roll. And once I learned what it was doing, all you got to do is pull that head up, and that horse cannot get down without putting its head down. It can't rear up without raising its head up. A horse can't run that direction with its head pointed this direction. So if you have a horse that tends to get out of control, you can grab one rein and turn the head of that horse, because it hurts the mouth of this horse, and they'll respond to that, and you can turn it, and a horse will go in a circle and stop. If you know what you're doing, you can control a horse. So I taught this 7-year-old boy that, and he rode my horses for over an hour and a half and never had a problem. And as he was getting off that horse, there was another guy that came, and he had just gotten married, and he was out to impress his wife. And I started to tell him that, you know, here's how you control these horses. And it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. He didn't want any instruction. He was going to impress his bride. And within 5 minutes, he was on his way to the hospital on the same horse that the 7-year-old had been riding for an hour and a half. And you know why? Because he did not control it. He let that horse get out of control. And once a horse is out of control, it's nearly impossible to rein back in, but it's easy to keep from getting out of control. So anyway, the point I'm making is it's the same thing with your emotions, that when something happens, one of the most important things that you can do is grab hold of your emotions and your response. And I tell you, this is not popular today. Matter of fact, psychology has worked its way into the church, and I would say even Christians have been taught pretty much that something's wrong with you if you have a tragic situation, and if you just don't fall apart, something's wrong. You're hiding it. You need to vent. You need to let everything out. That's not what Jesus said. I may come back to these scriptures, but let me show you this over in John chapter 14. And this is the very night before Jesus was crucified. And of course, Jesus knew what was going to happen to him. His disciples didn't fully understand. He had prophesied 14 times that he would die for the sins of the world. And 7 of those 14 times he prophesied that he would rise from the dead. So if they would have paid attention to what he was saying, they didn't have to respond to the things that they saw the way they did. And Jesus even told them, let me just back up a couple of verses into the 13th chapter, that he had just told them that he was going to die and that all men would forsake him. Did you know not only Peter, but every one of the disciples forsook Jesus and fled? All of them did. Now, Peter's the one that we often focus on, but when he was saying these things, in verse 36, this is John 13:36, Peter said unto him, Lord, whither goest thou? Jesus answered him, Whither I go, you cannot follow me now, but thou shalt follow me afterwards. And Peter said unto him, Lord, why cannot I follow thee now? I will lay down my life for thy sake. Jesus said unto him, Wilt thou lay down thy life for my sake? Verily, verily, I say unto thee, the cock shall not crow till thou hast denied me thrice. He had just prophesied that Peter was going to deny him 3 times before the rooster crowed in the morning. And the very next thing that he said, and you got to remember, people are the ones that put in the chapter and verse divisions, so this is not like it's a new chapter, it's a new thing. The next thing he said, he says, let not your heart be troubled. He had just talked to Peter about, you're going to deny me 3 times before the sun comes up. And then he says, now let not your heart be troubled. You know, that looks weird. And if you put this into the context, that this is the night before his crucifixion. And he was telling them, let not your heart be troubled. The very fact that he said, don't let your heart be troubled, shows you that you have control over your emotions. And again, this is just completely contrary to the average Christian. The people that don't even know the Lord don't even have any control over their emotions, really. But even Christians have gotten to the point that when tragedy hits, they expect that it's normal for me to grieve. It's normal for me to have fear. Did you know when COVID happened, Christians responded nearly as badly to that as the unbelievers did? And that was one of the things that just shocked me. Because, I mean, people panicked. I had people attack me. Sitting right here, I had all of the city elders. I just did an interview today. A guy's doing a book about the pastors or the ministers that stood up during COVID and didn't cave in to the government. And so they're doing a book, and they asked me to talk about when we sued the governor of Colorado, and he sued us twice. So I just did this interview, and she says, why were you doing this? What was the response of your staff and of the community? And I said, well, the staff responded really positively. I think they enjoyed it, the fact that somebody was standing up for our rights. But I said the community hated me for it. And I had the commissioners and the city council sit right here. And they just started telling me, you're a crook, you're a liar, you're killing people. And they came out against me and said terrible things. And I may not have responded the way I should. But I remember telling this one county commissioner who said, you have no integrity. You are a liar. And man, integrity to me is a big thing. And so this was something that did not bless me, the things that he was saying about me. And he was expecting me to get in the flesh and get really mad at him. And I just looked at him and I said, look, I've been criticized by people a lot more important than you. I shouldn't have said that, but that's exactly what I said. And anyway, I just didn't let it get to me. But you know, if you let your emotions get involved when somebody attacks you, criticizes you, when you have something happen, if you get into emotions rob you of your ability to think.